Welcome to another episode of Joan Deserves a Musical, where I talk about my efforts to turn the life of Joan of Arc into a family-friendly animated musical. And today, I want to do sort of a dry run, a first try, rough draft of a pitch for this thing. Now, there's not a date on the calendar where I expect to give a formalized pitch to a board of executives or whoever listens to movie pitches, but I will, in a couple weeks, be meeting with the executive producer of an animation studio, and I want to be ready for whatever might come. And my very helpful friend Mark posted on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago asking his network, do you have any advice for my friend Kyle, who's hoping to pitch a movie soon? And a woman named Tracy linked to a recommendation for formatting a pitch from Guy Kawasaki. Now, the perspective he's coming at this from is people pitching a company to venture, investors. But looking through it, I was just really struck by this concept that a good pitch can be very short. He suggests 10 slides. And it was not really apples to apples, figuring out how to turn those things into what are the 10 things to talk about with a movie. But I've come up with a very short pitch deck that I think captures the same spirit. And I want to go through it with you just to see how it feels performing it. I've never tried it before, even just on my own. And so you'll get to see my first attempt at this. And then also, if you have any feedback on how to make it better, I'm all ears. So here we go. All right, well, let's get started. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving me the time today to talk through this. Some of you may be under the impression that you're here to hear a pitch about a movie about Joan of Arc, but I've got to tell you, other than this little introductory disclaimer right now, where I tell you you're never going to hear the name of Joan of Arc, you're never going to hear the name of Joan of Arc in this presentation. I'm here to tell you this true story of a young woman named Joan. This is her actual signature. I turned it purple, but it is her real autograph. And I'm hoping to leave behind a lot of the baggage that's associated with this name of Joan of Arc, this tragic young woman who was burned at the stake, because I am hoping to tell an upbeat, inspirational story about a woman who had a brief and brilliant military career, a hero who was highly successful and did not get burned at the stake, at least in the scope of the story that I'm here to tell you. But first, let's talk a little bit about the market where we're looking to put this movie into. I did just a little bit of back of the envelope math, looking at animated films that have had theatrical releases in the States, 2020 to present. I apologize, this data is all from the States. I assume here in Canada it's not too different, but US data was easier for me as a US person to find. There's been just shy of 50 of these by my count, and if we want to divide them up into categories, nearly a quarter of these are based on familiar IP, right? These are things like the Garfield movie, SpongeBob, lots of recycling of characters we've seen before. An even bigger chunk is sequels, right? We have like Sing 2 and a couple of Trolls movies. And actually, Trolls is familiar IP also. So there are several. There's a small chunk here that is actually both familiar IP and sequels. We already did a movie with a familiar IP, and now we're coming out with a sequel. It's just this chunk here that is fully original animated films. And of that, just a tiny sliver, just 2 movies that I was able to find are fully original animated musicals. And this is bonkers to me because parents today are people like me. We are millennials. We grew up with the expectation that Disney was going to come out with a world-changingly good musical every year. And then other studios probably were going to have an okay musical now and then also. We saw We Are Back, we saw Prince of Egypt. There was always at least one and often 2 or 3 solid original musicals every year. And that's what we grew up on. That's what childhood is made of. And we parents really want to give this experience to our children. And we're just not seeing a lot of opportunities. And this is not just my opinion. I mean, it is my opinion, and it is the opinion of several friends I've spoken with, but there's data to back this up. If we look at the performance of Disney's live-action remakes of their Renaissance films, we see a serious disconnect here. The remakes compared to the originals see a huge drop in approval ratings from Rotten Tomatoes, but an increase in box office take. Right now, this isn't adjusted for inflation, so maybe they're closer to parity. But the point is, we millennial parents are so hungry for animated musicals that we're willing to go see recycled garbage. We know it's garbage, we hate it, but we keep going because it's all we have. And when Disney does come out with an original musical, they came out, the two here are Encanto and Wish. Everybody went and saw Encanto. Everybody was singing We Don't Talk About Bruno for months afterward. But then Wish came out, and it was a crushing disappointment. And if you look at just, if you go to YouTube and search for Wish reviews, you will see a truly unprecedented number of really angry people complaining about just how bad this movie was. And I have to ask why. I saw it. There's nothing especially hate-worthy about it. It is okay in the way a lot of movies are okay. But I think the problem is Disney promised us something nostalgic, something that was a return to form, something that would be as classic as their old musicals were. And it was not. It was disappointing in every way. And when you promise us this thing we've been hungering for our entire adult lives, something we can share with our children that we'll be talking about for generations, and you give us this, we get upset. And so the point is, there is a lot of appetite, there is a lot of desire, there is a lot of passion among parents today who would just love an original animated musical that they can take their kids with, that they can bond over, that is not a jukebox musical like Sing, or using some hokey IP we parents don't care about like Trolls, but is truly magical like Disney used to give us. That is a huge open field no one is filling right now. And I'm here to propose that the story of Jehan is a perfect fit for that. Tried my best to come up with a log line here. When a spirited farm girl claims heavenly voices have chosen her to lead his armies, an indecisive Dauphin must decide if she's the miracle France needs or just an enthusiastic dreamer. This is a musical targeted at kids and a family of a general audience. This is not faith-based. Certainly, she is a religious person, a religious figure, but I have done my best to adapt this in a way that is good for general audiences. She is Catholic. I'm not Catholic. I like the story, so I think it can work. It's feature length, and I would love to see this in traditional 2D animation. It is a war story. There are fights, and I think the stylistic freedom given in 2D animation, as opposed to the realism of 3D, would be a much safer, more wholesome way to approach this. And it will tap into that same nostalgic feel. I think a lot of millennial parents would love to see a traditional 2D animated musical that was worth watching. So let me give you a quick rundown of how it goes. There are 7 original songs in this movie, so I will use those as kind of milestones as I talk through this. The opening song is called Evidence. It kind of lays the scene. There's been this war going on between France and an invading enemy for a long time. A key city is about to fall. Charles, the Dauphin, is wringing his hands, doesn't know what to do. Everyone in France is wondering, how is this going to work out? We go from there to meeting our leading lady, Jehan. She's just a normal farm girl. She sings her I Want song. She is wishing for a better world. Her town is right on the front lines of this war. It's just recently been raided again. Everybody's rebuilding, and all the grown-ups seem to accept this as normal life. But she really thinks something better can happen. And her song gets interrupted as a heavenly light and voices come and call her to lead the army, which stuns her. But she picks herself up off the ground and goes off to talk to a local military leader and tell him, you got to send me to the king so I can be in charge of the armies. Unsurprisingly, he laughs at her. He says no. He slams the door in her face. And she's surprised and discouraged. But she gets a little pep talk from a local priest. She teams up with a soldier at this garrison where she's at. And they sing this song, Rise Up. They get all the soldiers rallied around this idea of sending her to the king. And finally, the military leader capitulates and says, okay, fine, I'll send you. So she goes off to to Chinon, where Charles lives. She comes to the royal court. She makes a big splash. She says, you need to send me in charge of the armies. People debate about whether or not that's a good idea. Charles can't handle the noise and confusion, so he takes her off into a quiet room, and the two of them have a private conversation, which is this duet, Heaven Does Too. And through this song, they come into alignment, and he decides to take a chance on her, and he sends her off to the city of Orleans, which is the strategic point that's about to be lost. She leads the armies. She is doing great, but then she gets taken out by an arrow. Oof, ouch. And she wakes up in a tent where her friends are treating her wounds, and she wants to go back and fight, but she just can't. She's in too much pain, and she is on the brink of giving up. But this priest who gave her advice earlier on and now is following her around sings this song, another duet with her, He Always Will, where he helps her find the strength to get back in her armor and go face the enemy again. And she leads the armies of France to victory. So this begins a campaign. She leads the armies to retake several cities that the French have lost. But as this goes on, she starts to realize the French soldiers are losing their focus. They're starting to be driven by hatred and by revenge rather than just a desire to regain their homelands and to have peace. And so she starts to despair a little bit and sings a reprise of her I Want song, wondering if this thing she's doing is actually going to get her where she wants to go. But the saints speak to her again and tell her, look, just get Charles to lead. He's the one who will bring peace around. You don't have to carry this burden much longer. So after retaking all the cities Charles sent her to retake, she goes back and insists that he leads the march to Reims, the coronation city. One of the big problems he's been facing is that he can't get crowned because the coronation city is in enemy hands. She has now cleared the way for him to get crowned, and so he leads the armies, and he has this transformational moment where he's been indecisive this whole time, but now he starts deciding, he starts leading. He is now worthy to be king. He gets crowned, and there's a big celebratory number. The opening song poses a lot of questions. The closing song answers those questions, and it's a nice come full circle moment. So that's what the story looks like. You have a quick list of characters here. This is Jeanne is a teenager. She is naive. She is really not the sort of person you would expect to be leading an army, and yet she is. She starts out the story like this, wide-eyed, innocent, and she ends up the story a wide-eyed innocent with a very large sword. Charles is this indecisive, hand-wringing Dauphin. He's not even sure if he wants to be king, and he can't get crowned anyway. The tension between these two characters is what really drives the story forward. Jeanne is charge forward, go, go, go. We got to win this war. Charles is, I don't know. Let me think about it. Let me ask some folks. And she's the gas and he's the brakes, and they have to meet somewhere in the middle to make any forward progress. In the court, there are two people who are Charles's closest advisors, Georges, who is the Grand Chamberlain, and Yolande, who is Charles's mother-in-law. These are basically the devil and the angel on his shoulder. Georges is saying, don't trust this girl. This is madness. This is crazy. Let's just keep doing nothing. Yolande is like, no, by all means, let's trust her. No questions asked. That does not help Charles feel any better as he's torn between these two very strong voices. Jeanne, as she goes through the story, pulls together this little entourage, her closest friends. There are four who are military men, and one is that priest who's following her around. There are three other military leaders that at various points Jeanne needs to convince of things. Two, a French, and one on the other side of the battle that she has confrontations with. And then kind of the whole frame of this story is Margaret and Catherine, the two voices that speak to Jeanne. These are Catholic saints, and at the beginning and end of the story, and a few times throughout, we see that this is a story they are telling to cute little unborn babies. And this is a really powerful device that not only lets us frame the story and have narrators, but also anytime the tension is getting to be too much for a young audience, these little unborn babies we can rely on to make an off-topic comment or ask a question or to scream in terror and pull the camera away from the heat of the battle. And then there are plenty of extras, soldiers, messengers, that sort of thing. Everything you would expect a medieval war movie to have. Creative team. I'm Kyle Jepson. Maybe I should have started with that. I have written the script for this thing. I defined the scope of it. The screenplay is ready to go. I've partnered with a woman named Amanda Vernon, professional recording artist, member of the Recording Academy. She has written all 7 songs. I have recorded demos ready for you to listen to. It is good music. She's good at what she does. And then I am hoping that you will produce this thing and we'll be able to work together on bringing it to life. Current status. Script is done. We've got 92 polished pages ready for your review whenever you'd like to look at it. 7 songs, professionally recorded demos, also ready for your review, as I already mentioned. So nothing left to do but for me to answer your questions. Okay, well, that's not so bad. It's a pretty tight 15-minute run. Not bad for a first try, I think. But if there are things you think are missing or that I should go deeper on or that I'm touching on too much, love to hear. Help me make this as good as possible.